everyone, I'm Dayna from Love Oz YA, and I'm here with Nina Kenwood talking about her new book, Unnecessary Drama. Hi, Nina.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, pleasure. So, the first question I always like to just start with is tell us what Unnecessary Drama is about.
Okay, so Unnecessary Drama is a rom-com set in a student share house during first year uni. It's about Brooke, who is a very anxious, type A sort of person who moves into this share house and then with these expectations of starting a shiny new life when she starts university and sort of moving on, being a new person. And then she finds out one of her housemates is Jessie, who is her kind of friend turned nemesis from high school. And they have sort of a history together, and that sort of plays out through the book as well. I call it a rom-com, but it's also a sort of starting uni novel. It's a meeting new friends novel. It's a coming of age novel. It's a love story. It's a story about living with anxiety and being very anxious. Yeah, so I think that it has a lot of elements in there.
It definitely does. Um, One thing I thought was really interesting because I went back and reread your first book, It Sounded Better in My Head,
Oh, that's so nice.
which I loved at the time when it came out too. And both are
Thank you.
set in that period after high school is finished. I
That's
mean,
right. Yeah.
Unnecessary Drama is a little bit later in time, whereas It Sounded Better in My Head is really in that summer period. What is it
Yeah.
about that time period just after high school finishes that you really like writing about?
I feel like it's such an interesting time to me. It's you've finished high school, you're 18 or going to turn 18 soon, and so you're sort of facing adulthood for the first time, and all of the kind of firsts that come with that. So we often say YA is about firsts, and that is a huge time of firsts. It might be the first time you leave home, first time you don't have the structure of school, you don't have the first time you don't have your sort of parents perhaps monitoring you or being there for you all the time, and that support system. The first time you might be branching out and thinking about what you want to do with the rest of your life, grappling with the idea that you're an adult now, even though maybe you don't feel like one. So I really like digging into all of those feelings.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess making new friends and thinking of yourself as potential, like exploring who you are when with people that you haven't known for years and years and years, like in high school.
That's right.
Yeah, it is
Yeah, who you want to be. Do
who
you
you
do
want to
you
be.
need
Yeah.
to leaving your high school persona behind, perhaps? But it's this idea that you can sort of change who you are.
Yes. I
Obviously, it's
think
not so easy.
Brooke Brooke
You're
kind of thinks that too, that maybe she can be
yeah.
slightly different than she is internally. Yeah. And I mean, one of the things that I really, really loved about It Sounded Better in My Head was the fact that it's one of the few YA novels that I've ever read that actually talks about acne. And whereas when I was a teenager, it was like, yeah, getting pimples and that sort of stuff, you really were conscious of it, makeup, all that kind of stuff. And of course, Natalie is grappling with polycystic acne, which is quite an extreme form of acne, and sort of the effects of that. And then in Unnecessary Drama, Brooke is obviously grappling with her own anxiety. She's dealing with some of those issues from her parents as well, and her dad and her relationship with him. So what was it about those two issues that really made you think, oh, there's something to write about here?
Yeah, it sounded better in my head, and the acne, like you said, I felt like it. Like I never want to be a person who says it's never been done before, but I hadn't read a lot of books
No, I agree. It
that
hadn't.
grappled with skin issues in a way. I had bad skin as a teenager, so it was tapping into and as an adult, and it's a real trauma.
It
It's
is.
something that it's not it's not a life threatening situation, and yet you have to show your face to the world every
Yeah.
day, and it can be really traumatic to feel that shame and that embarrassment. And it taps into, it's a universal feeling of whatever it is that you might be ashamed about with your body, or you might feel uncomfortable about. And so it was really trying to tap into that kind of obsessive feeling that you can get when you have something that plays on your mind that feels like it's really having a big impact on your life. So I wanted to really explore that with Brooke and the new book, because the first one was there was so much bodily stuff in It Sounded Better in My Head. And this one was a lot more internal. I was writing it during 2020 and 2021, and it was a time of great anxiety in the world. I had all kinds of anxieties going on in my life, very different from Brooke's. I had a new baby, I had COVID, there were various things happening, and I was in a state of, I mean, we had COVID around us, and I was in, a state of anxiety like a lot of other people. So I kind of channeled that, and, I'm a person who does deal with a lot of anxiety. So that was sort of tapping into that element, but obviously where mine was coming from and where Brooks is coming from is very different, but it's tapping into those feelings and sort of letting that flow through to the characters. While saying that, I guess I do think both books, while they are exploring those issues, are still joyful, kind of, well, I hope they are funny books, you know what I mean? I don't want it to sound like they are heavy reads, because
and that's what I thought was great about them actually as well, because it's almost a juxtaposition of, it's kind of like, well, yes, when you're watching a rom-com, they all have beautiful skin and all of these things that aren't what it's like when you're a teenager. So I really liked that juxtaposition of they could still be quite light and funny and great dialogue and witty and all of those things, but still talking about some difficult issues and some anxieties and things like that the characters are grappling with. So, speaking of anxiety, and this is your second published YA novel, and It Sounded Better in My Head, it won the Text Prize, and it's been shortlisted on a number of other prizes, and also I read optioned for the screen as well, so it's been hugely successful. What was it like coming to write your second novel, which, I mean, people do talk about there's sometimes more anxiety when you come into the second one? Did you find that?
Yeah, because it's, the first one, no one cares if you're writing it in a bubble. It's just for you. It's a completely your baby. No one knows about it. It's and it's only sort of, there's no deadlines, there's none of that exterior pressure. So yes, come to the second one. And everyone says, have your second book written before the first one comes out, which I did not do, because then you're removing whatever happens with the first one. You can still write that second one in sort of the bubble of not knowing. But I didn't do that, in part because I was pregnant in the lead up to my first book, so I just couldn't write. And so that was a big challenge for me. I had a new baby, and I was trying to find my way back to writing, and it was the feeling of having that first book out there, and the expectation of it did wonderfully in so many ways, and to follow that up, and to write. I actually kept a diary throughout 2020 of I thought, I'm going to keep a log of my experience writing the second book, and that way I can reflect back sort of once it's done on the journey. And that first year of 2020, it's just like, can't write, I'm so anxious about COVID, I'm so anxious about this, and I don't know whether COVID should be in the book or not, or what's going to happen with the world. Like, it was so much uncertainty.
Yeah, there was.
And I just couldn't find my groove back. And all sort of expectations and deadlines and all of that. But sort of around October of 2020 was when I figured out, I knew I wanted to have these, I wanted to have Brooke and Jessie, but I couldn't figure out why are they interacting at uni. And then I was like, actually, they're going to live together, share house, perfect. Because, when you have this situation where two people, you want to bring them together, you have to keep finding ways for them to interact. so that forced proximity, especially when they have this history.
Yes.
It was like, oh, and then everything kind of clicked into place after that.
Yeah.
So that was, and then it all kind of flowed. And I also I had a note to myself in that sort of writing diary that I was keeping, which was because when I wrote It Sounded Better in My Head, I wrote a lot of it in 2017, which was right after Trump had come in. So again, the world was feeling very scary at that time as well. And both times I had to remind myself to don't write in anger and fear, write towards joy. And so find the joy in the writing. And that's when both times was when it started flowing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. So finding the joy was the key to unlocking that
That's
process
right.
for you. Oh, that's interesting. Because I did wonder if you wrote the second one, Unnecessary Drama, differently than the first one. I spoke to Rhiannon Wild a few weeks ago, and she said, oh, it actually helped her knowing more about the editing process because she wrote more efficiently the second one. But were there
Yes,
anything like that where you...
I just saw Rihanna talking at Melbourne Writers Festival, and I was listening to how she talked about how she wrote her book, which was her ideas were fascinating. But I tend to write a draft zero, which is like on both books I did that, which is really just defining the voice and the character, and I don't care about plot. I'll just write whatever scene comes to my head. Characters can come in and out, change names. There's no continuity, and it's like when we say messy first draft, I call this draft zero because it's not even a draft; it's just nothing. But I had when I got to sort of the end of 2020, I had about 60,000 words of my draft zero, which was a lot of it is just internal of Brooke and various scenes, all about just finding the character, getting her voice right. And so I knew I had, and a lot of it was very anxious and kind of dark. And so I was like, okay, I've got this draft zero. I know Brooke's voice. I just need to sort of overlay a plot and joy and happiness and other characters and a rom-com plot on top of that and weave it all together. And so that's sort of start over with draft one, but knowing I have elements of draft zero to pull from to as kind of a guiding, okay, this is her voice and her thoughts. Because voice is very important for my kind of book, I think. So that's why I start with finding the voice and not caring about anything else. But I wish I was a planner. I wish I could plan it all and just follow a plan, but that hasn't worked for me so far.
Yeah. And one of the things I really love about your writing is just the dialogue. I think you do really well with that interchange between the two. Do you have any tips for people writing dialogue? How you do it?
I think as you come to writing and you have some bits that you love to do and that feel easy for you and some bits that are hard. And for me, dialogue is one of the things I think, okay, that's easy. Like I know I don't spend a lot of time even analyzing what I'm doing because I'm scared if I think too hard, I'll lose it's all about rhythm. And, but I love dialogue, and plot is hard for me. A lot of plotting stuff is where I get tangled up. Main things happen in the book. All of that is the stuff that I have to work really hard on. But dialogue is like, I could just write a whole book of dialogue, and that's what my editor's like, okay, we've just got dialogue here. We need to know what's happening. Like, are they moving? Where are they? And I'm like, can we just leave it as words and they can just picture what's happening? No, need to put a little bit in around it. So, unfortunately, I don't really have any tips other than I think lean into what you enjoy and feel like flows easily for you, whether that's plot or character or dialogue or voice or humor or whatever. And then once you've got a draft with the stuff that you love doing, then you can build out and work on the other parts.
Nice. So my final question was just, what do you hope readers take away from Unnecessary Drama?
Well, I hope that they feel a lot of joy and happiness, and I hope they get swept up in the romance, and I hope that they feel if you're an anxious person reading it, I hope that you feel less alone, maybe. I hope that it gives people, a laugh, joy, smiling. I love the idea. Sometimes when I'm reading a book, I'll find myself just have a big smile on my face while I'm reading. And that's sort of what I try and aim for with my books. Like, I love the idea of someone smiling while they're reading them.
Yeah. Well, mission accomplished for me. I definitely laughed a lot. I smiled a lot. I loved
you.
Brooke. I love Jessie. I think they're fantastic. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoy it, and I would definitely recommend for
Thank
everyone
you
to go
so
and
much.
pick it up. It's coming out, I think we said the 5th of October. So
5th of
not
October.
long
Yes.
to go.
Looks like this. You can actually see it up there,
Yes.
along with some other new release.
Yes, some ones that I loved. And I love that cover design. I just think it's so
I know. Yes,
crisp.
it's a scene from one of the chapters in the book, and it's exactly the vision I had for what I wanted the cover to be. So I'm very lucky.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time, Nina, and good luck with
Thank
the
you
book
so
tours
much
and
for
things like
having
that.
me.
Thank you.
Thank you.